During this course, we have learned a lot about professional learning committees. A professional learning committee is an ongoing process in which educators work collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry and action research to achieve better results for the students they serve. Professional learning committees operate under the assumption that the key to improve learning for students is continuous job-embedded learning for educators. In our district, PLCs are called achievement teams. At our school, we are not 100% of achievement teams. Not all departments have it. Our foreign language department is one of those. Our foreign language teachers have been reluctant to the idea of conforming an achievement team for the different levels of the languages. There are three big ideas that drive PLCs. We have to ensure that all students learn. In order to do this, we have to ask ourselves four questions. What is it we want our students to know? How will we know if our students are learning? How will we respond when students do not learn? How will we enrich and extend the learning for students who are proficient? The second big idea is having a culture of collaboration. Form a team where members work interdependently to achieve common goals for which they are mutually accountable. Have a regular time for collaboration. Members are clear on the purpose and priorities of their collaboration. Stay focused and on task. The principal provide teachers with resources, trainings, and ongoing support. The last big idea is to focus on results. Know if students are learning and respond appropriately to their needs. During this big idea, it is important to achieve SMART goals, to gather and analyze evidence of student learning. Evidence of student learning is being used on a regular basis to identify the specific needs of individual students. The primary reason to become a PLC is to impact and improve our teaching. Step number one in leading a PLC was to form a team. I had to be careful who I invited to be part of it because we have teachers in our department that do not like to have common lessons, grading, assignments, and projects. For my team, I chose 3 other Spanish teachers. Jennifer, who has been with our school over 30 years, she teaches Accelerated Spanish 2. Ed, who is our department chair and has been teaching for over 15 years, and Juan, who teaches native speakers Spanish 2. Step 2 was to establish norms as a team. It is important to establish these norms to help determine whether the group will function as a high-performing team or become simply a loose collection of people working together. We wanted to make sure we were strong enough to continue working as a professional learning committee. We decided that our norms were to have an open communication and collaboration, pretty much be open-minded at all times, commit to dates and times that work well with everybody. So set up a calendar, have established goals, so have a plan, share lessons that have worked well in the class, therefore share best practices, debrief at the end of the lesson or unit. We want to know what went well and what needs improvement. That way we can change for the following chapter or unit. Our focus for Chapter 4A was to increase student engagement and motivation by changing the lessons for our last chapter of this school year. We've noticed a lot of students have lost this motivation and engagement, and their grades are slowly decreasing, and we want to make sure they end this year strong. As a team, we focus on creating new activities, a new quiz, and a final project instead of a test for this chapter. Our SMART goals were: by the end of the first week, 90% of the students will be able to identify the Cuando era niño vocabulary. By the beginning of the third week, 90% of the students will be able to use the imperfect tense to talk about childhood. And by the end of the third week, 98% of the students will use the vocabulary Cuando era niño in context and will be able to use the imperfect tense correctly. Our outcome of our PLC were common lessons, common assessments, and common projects. For the common lessons, instead of using the textbook, we actually used online resources and other hands-on activities that would have students engaged and motivated to complete them. Instead of having them copy the imperfect tense notes, we actually used Pear Deck to make it more interactive for them. This was our first time using it. Jennifer was the only one that had used it in the past. Therefore, she actually modeled one of her lessons on the imperfect tense during one of our PLC meetings. Our common assessment, instead of having a chapter test, we actually created a common project. The only common assessment for this chapter was actually a quiz that we created using Socrative. So it was an online quiz instead of having them take the test or the quiz on paper. What we noticed during these last weeks, it was very easy for us to work together and come up with positive ideas. Our PLCs are more than just common grading categories like some of our colleagues think. We were excited to share lessons and not have to come up with our own ideas. In the classroom, we noticed increase in student engagement, increase in quiz scores, and we had 100% student participation on the project. We had no failing grades for this project, therefore, it was a great outcome because we have 4 or 5 students that always fail a chapter test. Thank you for listening about my experience with PLC, and thank you for the feedback.